What is similar and what is different between kind of finance and the space you're in now? Do you take anything with you from that?
I would say the healthcare customer, they're very grateful for the care. I was at Cabbage in the early days when we were really educating small businesses on a much easier way to get financed. It was much more challenging in terms of the customer feedback because people always want more money. It's never enough.
Are you saying people are more demanding about their money than their health?
And you're much more demanding. And, some of that is possibly the expectations around healthcare in this country. And there's certainly a lot of challenges there. You can actually build a trusted healthcare brand that's actually cool, that people want to be a part of, that sort of identify this as a brand or a product that I am excited about to talk to my friends about, even at the dinner table, which is not really the case in most healthcare companies. And so those are the types of brands that I'm excited to build, and it's really nice to be able to take a lot of that sort of e-commerce. How do you get the consumer to take the next action and really take that mindset into the healthcare space?
You come on to head up marketing in the context of a high profile pivot, refresh, sort of relaunch of the company. Talkspace was one of the pioneers in sort of virtual mental health services, had a high profile IPO, had some struggles after that, and then the business was kind of reimagined. How did you kind of jump into a brand that was a market leader but was clearly having some struggles?
It was scary, I have to say, because you look at that word turnaround and you know that it's going to go one of two ways. Certainly coming into Talkspace where mental health is top of mind for everyone. Doesn't matter your age, doesn't matter where you're located. Preventative mental health it was kind of there for the taking for us to come in and be the leaders, but we really needed to figure out a lot of the fundamentals. And fortunately, I had come from a telehealth company that was in the women's health space and had done a lot of helping people understand that getting high quality healthcare in a different way through virtual doesn't have to be expensive. In particular with Talkspace, our big pivot was really getting in network with the largest major insurers so that most people, over 60% of people actually end up paying a $0 copay for their Talkspace therapy. And cost has always been sort of the prohibitive piece of mental health care, and Talkspace is really eliminating that. But what was interesting coming into the company is they didn't really have the playbook to understand, how do you drive this awareness? What do you talk about to get people excited to take that next step? And really for us, and again, coming from a telehealth company, I knew this was the case. Telling people to just check their coverage and see if they're covered was a huge part of really bringing that to life. And fortunately, from a marketing perspective, this was a case where, really drawing on my past experience when I came in, I was like, yes, it's scary to go through a turnaround, but I've kind of been there, done that. I know that I can do it again. And how can I really make what I've done in the past at Nurex in the women's health space translate to the mental health space? And that's really what I was thinking about and what I did.
So did that become your sort of key call to action, no matter what the marketing channel was like, check with your insurance, maybe this is covered? Did you just start orienting everything around that and insurance?
That was exactly it. And then there were a whole host of things surrounding that we were testing. Things like therapy could be free for you, $0 copay. Of course, you have to have the table stakes as a healthcare company. You have to be able to match someone with a therapist quickly. You have to be able to have high quality care. People have to be feeling better. You have to have, ease of use in the technology. So all of those are sort of table stakes and the things that Talkspace was already good at. But I think, there's this underlying feeling that everyone has and has for a very long time, is that therapy is expensive. It's very hard to access, which the access piece is definitely still true and a huge part of it. And you're talking to a therapist every week. And if you think about, in a major city like San Francisco, this could be $400 a session, which is cost prohibitive for the vast majority of people. So leading with cost, as a marketer is definitely not always where you want to be because you don't want to cheapen your product. But in this case, in healthcare, where this is like going to the gym, right? This is something that you're doing every single week. We really had to change that mindset that therapy is healthcare and it doesn't have to be expensive. And so that's really where bringing all those messages in came to play. But yeah, that was the center of everything that we do. Sort of ends with we're covered by most major insurers, and it could be free for you.
How did you think about the legacy from the prior business that just shows up on Google searches and that kind of thing? How did you sort of deal with that? Where, just times where, stock price, tumbled, executives left, there were sort of, law firms that, circling and all of this. You have that online. You can either try to mitigate the existing negative, or you can just like drown it out with positive. Like, let's create a lot of new headlines.
Fortunately for Talkspace, because we had Michael Phelps as our brand advocate in 2021, around the time when we went public, a lot of people remember that. And so we actually have pretty outsized positive brand awareness from a consumer or from a member perspective, given that, we were spending a lot on brand media. We had Michael Phelps behind us, and he was really kind of one of the first that came out publicly to talk about mental health and how he worked with a Talkspace therapist. So we actually had a pretty positive halo from a brand perspective. I think from an investor perspective, that's where it was really like, you just have to show the numbers. And so for me coming in, I really needed to show, what was the playbook that was going to get us the, ultimately the customer acquisition that we needed to turn this thing around, because the brand was actually in good shape.
Sometimes when people search after profitability, they narrow the targets. What I mean is that it just becomes focus, right? It's like, we're trying to do too many things, too many groups of people. We just need to focus on, and you see it a lot in companies where it's like we have 8 targets and 6 of them are unprofitable really for us. And because we're trying to, battle for market share. And so we're just going to eliminate those 6, focus on the 2 where we think we can win. And that's the path to profitability. What you're saying was, it was actually the opposite, which you just sort of, because it, the act of having it potentially covered by insurance put so many more people into play, probably changed the kind of socio-demographic you go after. You actually broaden things instead of narrowing things.
Absolutely. And it's interesting in how it played out as well, in a couple of different ways. One is we had a strong brand, but we really wanted to evolve it. When I came on at Talkspace and I told people I was coming to the company, pretty much everyone said, "Oh yeah, Talkspace, that's the Michael Phelps brand." And I was like, "Yes, that's amazing." Again, we punch above our weight from a brand perspective, but we wanted people to know us for so much more than the partnership that we have with Michael Phelps. And so part of that brand evolution, and we launched this year in May during Mental Health Awareness Month, we launched our new brand refresh. And that was really taking the stories that Phelps was telling about his own mental health and putting that into the hands of our own Talkspace members. Because when we went to them and we talked to them individually and directly, every single person had their own unique story of how therapy helps them get through something, therapy helped them build resilience in their life, or help them to be able to cope whatever was kind of in the future or happening next, and to be more confident in doing that. And so you couldn't have made up these stories on your own or even gleaned them from sort of a user survey as an example. And so that was really where we started, bringing our own members, putting them on camera. And that was woven into the story that we tell with our brand. And the brand refresh has really been a huge piece of the success in general, because not only does it look beautiful, and it brings us into a much more modern look and feel, and a much more deliberate feel in terms of how all the pieces work together. We actually saw when we incorporated it into our advertising, it performed better. Whenever we brought it into our website and we tested it, we were seeing better conversion rates. So it was a really great example of how, a lot of marketers, as they're working to evolve brands, they get, a little bit of criticism.
Like, looks pretty, but ineffective or something like that, you're saying?
Yeah, like, what is that going to solve? But we were actually able to show the performance, which was really great.
I know you've mentioned Mental Health Awareness Month. I know you've done things for Men's Health Awareness Month, known as Movember, other things. Does it change the nature of the marketing mix for you, or is it the same and it's just, different messaging?
I would say the messaging is the biggest piece. So it's really a combination of reaching out to people on social through a lot of the creator tools, reaching out to our own members and using their own, getting their approval, of course, and using their own user generated content in our advertising, and really through everything that we do, all the way down to our events booths. When we go to an event, our backdrop has a photo of one of our customers. In the past, it would have been Michael Phelps, and certainly he's there as well alongside our members. But we're bringing that into everything that we do. And we find that because there are so many of these unique stories, it's almost endless with the creative concepts that you can come up with. And in a way, as a marketer, sometimes it's easier, truthfully, because trying to spin a product over and over and over a million ways, and thinking of how do you skin the cat differently every time, gets pretty tricky. But it's really our users that are doing that for us, and we're leveraging a lot of those stories. The other big piece of it is, we actually don't spend on, what you might consider traditional brand. Yet our brand awareness, as we have moved most of our marketing, almost all of our marketing, to really true programmatic, our brand awareness has increased. And a lot of that is because we also took a partnerships first approach in figuring out really how to leverage partners who were also, really great brands that were in the health and wellness space that have an adjacent audience to ours. And how can we really partner with them, not just from a marketing, put us on an email, we'll put you on an email, but really, how do you think about where the products sort of intersect? And for us, it's really kind of comprehensive care and how we partner with different brands in the space that can be integrated across even, what our therapists do every single day. So we brought on in the last year probably between 10 and 20 unique partnerships that are really driving a lot of that awareness through these other audiences, and not just awareness, but brand value as well.
What's an example of one that was particularly impactful, just to get a sense of this sort of partners with those who, I guess, can round out your comprehensive care?
One of the first was actually Aura. If you're familiar with them, they have doing very, very focused on sleep initially, but now they're focused on overall health and wellness. They were actually launching a sleep tracking product, and they came to us and we had this conversation, and we were like, actually, and this all happened very organically, which is how I think the best partnerships are created. We said, we've talked to our therapists, and they've told us that having these conversations with people about their sleep can sometimes be challenging, because people say, how is your sleep? And people are like, it's okay. I think, it's sometimes it's hard to even really realize where you might need help from a sleep perspective. So they were releasing a sleep tracking product where you can sort of export the sleep data from your Aura and share it with your healthcare provider. And we created a way for people to load that into their Talkspace therapy room, so that would just help them enable them to have a more productive conversation with their therapist. And so that was just a beautiful sort of product integration. And then we were able to tell the story about how sleep and mental health go hand in hand. And given, I think I'll say, the sexiness of the Aura brand and the tried and true trusted nature of Talkspace, it went together really well, because they had an objective, which was get the sleep product out, but also they want to be seen as a healthcare company. And we have an objective as well, is how do we leverage partners to really help go above and beyond in these conversations with your therapist, but also to get the word out. And they have millions of users. And so that checked the box for us.
What do you think most marketers in your industry miss that they would be wise to pay attention to?
All of these things that you're doing with your brand, a la brand marketing, think about how you can really also leverage it in your acquisition marketing and your paid marketing, and that these two things it seems obvious and it sounds obvious, but a lot of CMOs that I talk to, they're still thinking about brand as like a completely separate department and what you do over here, and not thinking as much about how it really all works together. And every brand campaign that we launch, my head of brand is looking at how did it perform relative to last year? How can we bring calls to action into the brand campaign to make sure that people are coming back, that we have a long relationship with them, and then ultimately, the end goal is to get them to trust Talkspace and use us for their therapy. So really, just thinking about that integrated marketing piece, that really sounds so obvious, but it isn't to so many. So that's a big piece for us, is when we're building a campaign, we're thinking about what is the core and sort of the brand message, and how do we incorporate it across all of our performance marketing. And we still have the conversation of, well, but this is a brand campaign. Well, okay, we're leveraging these member stories, we're leveraging Phelps, we're leveraging these partners. How do we bring that into our paid advertising? And so we will incorporate that into all of our briefs when we're working with creators, to make sure that for Mental Health Awareness Month, and for New Year's, by the way, which is coming up, ensuring that all of those messages are cohesive across paid. Taking it a step further, for us, we also have enterprise clients. So we talk a lot about getting the end user and the member to use Talkspace for therapy. We also have enterprise clients who are purchasing Talkspace on behalf of their organization or their city or their school, as an example. And that's a completely different audience for us. We are really driving efficiency in the marketing organization by making sure that whatever campaign we are coming up with, it will also apply across all of our audiences. Because ultimately, what matters to an end user who is using Talkspace for therapy will be interesting to an administrator of a school or an HR executive who also wants to understand, how is Talkspace solving these issues for my population? And I think that's another thing that I see in companies like Talkspace, where there is sort of this hybrid B2B, B2C, B2B2C, and all of these different distribution channels, is just building that cohesiveness in the message across all of your campaigns.
You've mentioned what we kind of call either calendar-based marketing or sort of kind of ownable brand moments. I mean, you've mentioned whether it's Mental Health Awareness Month or Men's Health Awareness Month or now New Year's. How important is that kind of calendar-based marketing for you?
The calendar, yes, but it's also the things that come up from a social perspective that we don't anticipate. And so being on top of those social moments and being ready when there's something, whether it's a meme, whether it's a social trend, we will piggyback on as many of those as possible where it's relevant to Talkspace and Talkspace therapy. And ultimately, therapy is highly relevant across a lot of different topics. So that's fortunate. When I talk to other marketers, quite often I say, fortunately for Talkspace, everyone needs therapy. So that's actually really helpful for us in our marketing. But one example is, if you remember the man in finance meme.
I'm looking for a man in finance with trust fund, 6'5", blue eyes.
We immediately jumped on that, and we had sort of, compare the man in finance to your therapist. And, we will do that with a lot of things that come up. The demure meme, we had the wear meme, all of them. We have the Talkspace version of those that we launch, and they usually are our top performing ads over and above even the user generated content. So it's like the calendar, but it's really the micro calendar and these micro moments that we just have to act quickly on.
What is the best advice you've ever received?
Look at the marketing organization and look at where the money is going and learn about that. Because for me in the early days in digital marketing, that's exactly what I did. I looked at, what is the thing that the CMO was struggling with? What is the thing that, I was in ad agencies in the early days. What at the time it was, our clients were like, what do we do with this digital marketing? Where do we put it? We've been buying billboards. We spend millions of dollars on newspapers, even in a lot of the companies that I worked with. What do we do with digital? We're willing to put whatever we need to put behind it from a budget perspective to figure it out. And I knew nothing. I had no idea what I was doing, but I was like, that's what I'm going to learn. And I think it's the same now. If you're a marketer and you're coming up, you should be learning AI and how to empower your teams with AI. So go where the money is, because it will also give you the visibility with the highest level people in the organization at an early career. And then that just follows you through, because, as you move through your career over time, like, you're going to be the most junior person in the boardroom because you're spending all their money.
What has been the worst day in your professional life? Is there a moment that stands out?
I had a child a little bit later in life. And a lot of what drove that was just wanting to continue to move through the career and sort of accelerate my career. And I always really kept like any conversation about family, kids, completely separate from work. And I would see people who, bring their kids into the office, sort of integrate their life. And this was before COVID, of course, into work. And I was always that person that was like, if you're at work, just focus on work. Like, I don't want to hear about the family. Like, it's just, for me, it was all work, work, work. Of course, your life changes when you have a child. And there was this one point where I decided that it made sense to bring probably at the time, maybe she was 1 or 2, my daughter into the office because we were having an office happy hour. So I brought her in. Everything was going swimmingly. Of course, I'm standing there with my wine, my kids running around the office. My CEO comes to me and says, "Hey, we just had an investor pop in. We need you to come in and talk to them in the conference room." And I'm sitting there going, oh my gosh, this is exactly, right? This is exactly what I did not want to happen. This is my worst nightmare. This is exactly why you don't, involve your family and your kids and work. And, I was dragged off to the conference room and I went in and I'm sitting there presenting to this investor. And my daughter comes up and is banging on the door, crying. And I'm sitting there just, wanting to cry, but had to keep my cool. Got someone from the office to like take her and walk her around like 7th and Mission in downtown San Francisco, which I'm sitting there going, oh my gosh, what have I done? And in the end, you know what? It all worked out fine. Everyone was understanding. And it just kind of, it was that like very scary moment for me, but everyone was so understanding. And it just really taught me, you got to bring your life into your work. You have to. Otherwise, keeping that separation, you got to bring that human aspect into your life. And so I don't know, that was an epiphany for me. But now with my team, I'm always making sure I love learning about my coworkers' kids. I make sure that they have the time off they need. I tell them when my kid is sick, and, we have a lot of these conversations related to work. So yeah, I would say just one thing, like, for all the working moms out there, don't be afraid to integrate a lot more and do it much earlier. Because I didn't, and then I ended up having a little bit of a meltdown, and it wasn't fun.
Thank you so much. Katelyn Watson, CMO Talkspace, doing the turnaround, first profitable quarter, which is what has been promised for a while. And it's nice to follow through on what has been promised. A really interesting story, interesting marketing case study, and look forward to following the continued growth and continued success. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Ben.